Lovely. Welcome everybody to this conversation about mental health and well-being and the church, which is part of the Fresh Streams Conference 2021 Back to the Future. I am Ruth Rice and I'm the founder of Renew Wellbeing, which was founded and birthed out of this network. So I'm really glad to be hosting this conversation. What I'm not going to do, and I'm sorry if that's what you've come for, I'm not going to tell you how to set up a Renew space. We're not going to be talking specifically just about Renew Wellbeing. If you want to know how to set one up, quick. You can get this book from St Andrew's Bookshop, which is at the top of your screen if you go onto the main screen for the conference, or you can get one from us if you email us at mandy@renewwellbeing.org.uk. We can do you a deal on a group set. It's the Big Church Read using this book, which I would really commend to you, not just because it gets a lot of books sold, but because it'd be a great way to use lockdown to get everybody reading a book and then studying it together. And if you go onto the Big Church Read website, then I've recorded 6 videos with 6 lots of questions that you can do over 6 weeks in small groups. It just might be a good way to do a bit of content as well as getting the whole message about well-being and slowing down and prayer into your church's hands. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to a few friends, but before we do any of that, we're going to pray. But so that you know what will actually happen in this conversation is I'm going to introduce you to some folk from the Renew family who are running Renew centres, and I'm going to ask them 2 questions. One about what are the challenges they're seeing out there in mental and emotional health in their area. And then I'm going to also ask them what their kind of dreams are and if there's some good news stories. And then we're going to talk to a few other charities who have joined us, some of our great partners and friends from Kintsugi Hope, from Talk Through for a youth mental health charity, and from Sanctuary Ministries, which are good friends of ours. So we'll be hearing from each of those charities as well. And then we'll get into breakout groups and we'll chat together about what are the challenges and what do we need to resource us as churches to face them. Might be personal challenges, might be community challenges, might be what's this going to look like as a church coming into a situation that already 1 in 4 people had mental health challenges, and now of course that's not going to be any better, is it, coming out of a year of lockdown and pandemic. So I hope you will feel encouraged. I hope the word well-being and shalom will settle with you. So just so we do that, if you've got a cuppa with you, hold it in your hands and know that you are held. Know that your life, like this cup, is in the hands of a God who is still good, who hasn't changed character because the earth has shifted on its axis. He still holds us. So we fill that cup with a meditation, and the meditation today is from Psalm 2, and it's about worshipping him. We worship him, only him, with fear, it says, actually. So you have to be careful with that word fear. It is reverence, awe. Just take a moment, breathe in. Whatever day you've had so far, breathe out. Know that he fills the cup of your life, that we worship and serve only him. And then I'm just going to screen share morning prayer. So this is from our dear friends in Wales. So this is Naomi has put this together. And this is what morning prayer would look like in a Renew centre. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. So just take a moment to bless him, to thank him for who he is. Just a sentence, just where you are in the quiet. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, forget not all his benefits. So thanking him for any blessings and benefits in your life at the moment. The psalm goes on, he forgives all our sins. What a relief. Take a moment, receive his forgiveness. Thank you, Jesus. He heals all our diseases. So just lifting up those names. The list is getting longer, isn't it? You know, there's a while back where people were saying, well, I don't know anyone with COVID, but oh, Lord, we bring you those who are struggling, those who are bereaved. He redeems our lives from the pit. So knowing that he rescues and the pit is any hopeless situation, let's bring in places around the world, situations we've seen on the news, knowing that only he can rescue. So just say them, the names of those places. Jesus, North Korea. Right here, Lord, in this nation too, would you blow this virus from the air, Lord? We beg you, we plead with you, we ask you, Lord, that this season would not last long. He crowns us, the psalm says, it comes to land in our section with this. He crowns us with love and compassion. I just love this image of the King of Kings coming towards us with a crown. Just give him your heart and your head and your hands and your thoughts and your fears and allow him to crown you with compassion. Your daily coronation to join in with the King of Kings in co-producing kingdom. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Receive his love. And if we were in a Renew Centre now, I'd say the kettle's on, the activities are out, and you can go and join in, or you can stay in the place of prayer as long as you like. And that's one of our rhythms of prayer from Renew Wellbeing. I wanted to start with that because this is not just a conversation about the desperate situation of people's mental and emotional health challenges, but it's also a great discussion about the hope that there is in the gospel, which is a gospel of shalom and of well-being. But we want to be honest and realistic about this. So let's get some people in to have a little chat with us. So I am going to spotlight some folks. So let's find a few folk that we can bring in here and spotlight. I'm going to add a spotlight to some of my team. This is the Renew Wellbeing team that I'm bringing in alongside me here. And let me see. We've got quite a few of us that are working in different places across the country. If you're able to spotlight yourself, team, that would be amazing, but I'm finding you. There we go. There we are. And Naomi in yet? No. I think she had a funeral to do. So, this is the team from Renew Wellbeing. So we've got coordinators for North, South, East, West now, and for Wales, which is really exciting. And just whilst the team are having a little think about what they're feeling about the mental and emotional state of the nation. It's a big question, isn't it, really? I'm just going to bring in a couple of folk who are actually running Renew Centres at the moment to join this conversation. Question I'm going to ask you guys is, what are you seeing where you are in terms of mental and emotional health challenges? And what sort of stuff that's going on where with your Renew space is helping that, and what are you looking forward to? So there's quite a lot of questions there. You can't talk for too long either. So am I missing anybody that I said I'd bring in? Shout at me if I am. Right. So if you guys on the screen want to unmute yourselves, and then we'll just have a little bit of a chat. So Sarah, let's start with you. Hang on a minute, just gonna, right. So I should be on, what just happened to my screen then. I should have just spotlighted people and it didn't work. Did it work for you? Were you all seeing the right people on the screen? Is it just me? It all went to pot there for a minute. I think that's because I've got too many people spotlighting. Let me just bring everybody back on that should be here again, because I lost you all. So those who are co-hosts, don't touch anything for a minute, because I think somebody just lost us, everyone there. Let's start with Sarah. Where are you, Sarah? Come and tell us a little bit about what you're seeing where you are. That'd be great. There you go, Sarah. What are you up to? What's your role, and what are you seeing where you are?
Well, I've got two Renew roles. One is for the Eastern region, and what I'm seeing is lots of places saying we're going to get something started. We don't know quite how or what yet, or some of them actually do, and they're starting off online, which is brilliant, and that's happening all over the country, I know. So I'm working with those churches, helping them to get themselves organised to do that. And I'm also working on developing the Renew way of doing things for children, youth and families. So I'm thinking about how can we do the brilliance of Renew for children and young people, because I think the need there is huge and it will go on being huge. And if we can help young people and children and their families to develop habits and ways of well-being, then we will be doing a good thing. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. It's quite tricky, please pray, because young people do not want to do Zoom because they're doing too much of it for school. But that's part of what we're working with. So
Thanks, Sarah.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
So there's still massive challenges, aren't there, for young people as well? We'll get Nate to speak into that a bit.
Yeah.
What we can do about that. As a Renew movement, we are still looking at how we can open safely Renew spaces for that. And Sarah's your lady for that if you want to talk about that a little bit more. Fiona, in the north of England, it's gone a bit crackers, isn't
Yes,
it? Tell us
it
about
has.
Renew in the north.
Right. They like to say it's grim up north. I beg to differ. You'll probably have noticed on the national news that it's areas of the north, Liverpool, there was Hartlepool at one point, Manchester, various areas in the north of Cumbria, they had a bit of a spike. And it seems to be this, we've been in some sort of lockdown for months and months and months and months. People are exhausted. People are exhausted and they're impatient. And I think we're seeing that coming through with Renew. When we went into the first lockdown, there were 7 centres. I'm talking numbers, and I know it's not a numbers game, but I think it's important to demonstrate. There were 7 centres in the north. During the last 12 months, 7 more centres have opened up in the north, so that's 14. I've got another 6 in training, so that's 20 centres that I'm working with, and I made another 5 connections yesterday. So it's what I'm seeing,
growth. Yeah.
what I'm seeing in the north is people saying we've had enough of this, we need to do something. And my biggest job is holding people, not holding them back, but just getting them to be cautious. I've got certain centres that I can name, like Northallerton, who I don't need to worry about because I know they've got it sorted. And then there's other centres that terrify me, but it's a joy. It's a joy to work in the north. And I would say what's happened over the lockdown is that the centres have become a group, in that they help each other out. One day I was busy doing something. I was on a meeting, and it was just after Boris had announced the current lockdown, and I was freaking out a bit. And the northern WhatsApp group was all talking to each other and saying, what do you think we should be doing? They were giving each other advice, and I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on? And when I went back and looked at it, it was good advice. And they were all helping each other out. And I thought, well, actually, we're getting to the point where, well, they do need me, but they are self-sufficient. And we're certainly seeing Bradford. We've got a city centre church in Bradford that's opening up. They're on Zoom at the minute, but they're hoping to open in February in person. And that's a C of E. And then we've got the organic church in Cumbria, in the next to the Lake District. That's an area that's starting to flourish for us as well.
I think we've seen as a charity, haven't we, an increase in interest from churches that previously would have put Renew Wellbeing as yet another programme they'll have a look at one day.
Yeah.
We've never seen this as a programme, another plug in and play for the church. This is the way of being church that is fireproof, actually. So you can have rhythms of prayer you can share even in a lockdown. You can be present even if it's on a screen. You can partner with mental health services even if it's over the phone, and you can always pray. You can always pray. So if you've got a COVID compliant building of some sort, great. That I would suggest the first thing you need to get going is a Renew space. But then I would say that I get frustrated with leaders leaders who are working so hard to try and get their Sunday show on the road, and there's people who are so desperately lonely they haven't spoken to anyone all week. So I just, you know, really want churches, I want to put the challenge out there to say, don't do Renew, do something. And that's why we've brought our buddies in on this conversation to say, here's a few other options, but please, every church, get a plan together about mental and emotional well-being now, not then, now, because for you yourselves as leaders, you're going to need it, let alone anybody else. Thanks, Fiona. It's good news really from our charity. It's grown, we've tripled our reach during lockdown and tripled the team, and it's not a good thing in some ways though, because we don't want to be this busy as a mental health charity. So it's a tricky old time. Steve, if I just bring you in now, because you're one of Fiona's projects in the north, and so just tell them about the project that the new project you run, would you please?
You're talking about the living rooms, yeah?
Yeah.
What else would I talk about? So the picture of the cup with the hands around it that Ruth has behind her, that's on the front cover of the book, her new book, which is definitely worth a read, I'm sure, is from Northallerton, and it's from a lad called Mark, who was one of our first visitors to the living rooms. The living rooms has at its core a Renew Centre, and he came to us as a long-term alcoholic that the statutory services had tried their best but had given up, like that, kind of like the woman who had tried all to get rid of her problem, her blood problem, and she came to Jesus. Do you remember? He tried everything, spent everything. This lad was in his early 50s, and no one would touch him anymore. And he came to us, and we just loved him. We just brought him in and accepted him. And he kept posting on Facebook on his page that the living rooms was kind of the reason why he was alive, and we were his family. And he was a photographer as well. And so we commissioned him to take some photographs, and this photograph that Ruth has used for the front of a book is from Mark. Sadly, Mark passed away just before lockdown, but he was on a journey of faith, and we dare to believe that actually he had reached his destination because of the prayer that he didn't get involved with to begin with, but eventually he did. Two things about the living rooms which are really exciting. We've been on a journey to set it up for about 5 years, and we were looking for a core for this community project, which involves the food bank, it involves debt advice, it involves partnership with the NHS, all sorts of services. And we were looking for something to make at the core, and that's when we came across the Renew model through Ruth. And it took us a long time to open, because the other thing about the living rooms is that we are not just one church. I'm a minister, I'm a pastor of a Baptist church, and I've been working with vulnerable people for many years and gradually getting to this point where I wanted a community hub. But when we decided to do it, I felt God clearly saying that this should not just be our church project. And so I joined together. Fortunately, we have good relationships with the churches in town, and we joined together with the Anglicans, the Catholics, the URC Church and the Methodist Church, and we set up a new charity called the Living Rooms. And it's just been such a wonderful experience, a unifying force in our town where the churches have come together, and we've taken over some premises. And when we were just doing it up, it was just wonderful to wander in and see people from the Methodist Church painting next door to somebody from the Catholic Church that wouldn't have anything to do with them normally. There would be no reason to come together normally, but they've been brought together in this wonderful project. And it's been fantastic. God has really blessed us in our favor in the town. And we talk about partnering with lots of other statutory and voluntary organizations who've been knocking at our door, even through this COVID-19 time. And they know what we stand for. They know that we do prayer. We know what we believe in. And this has been one of the exciting parts for me, that we have now built such huge bridges into our community. And what can I say? It's been fantastic.
Yeah. And I think partly that the favour that's on you is because you've come as one church in Northallerton. And I just bless you for that, because New Life Northallerton could have held this on their own, and it would have been easier, and you would have been open quicker.
A lot sooner.
It took 4 years for Steve and the team to get going. Now, there are other places that because they can, because they're quite light on their feet. We had one centre where I trained them on the Saturday, they were open the following Wednesday. So it's about what you've got in your hands and how you move. Ellen, just come in on this for us, will you? Tell us about where you are and what you're seeing where you are, would you?
So Renew Stocky is right in the middle of a deprived part of Derby. So I think we've had 5 young men in this immediate area who've committed suicide through this last year. We have so many lonely people around. We met in the park when we could until the weather changed. The community centre let us meet there for a few weeks until the next stage of lockdown happened. So now we're on Zoom and walking one-to-one, which isn't just about the hosts doing the walking one-to-one, but different members are walking one-to-one together, and phone calls and delivering cake. We are known locally as the Cake Club. Different people bake cake and share them around, and again, that's not just the hosts that are doing that. There's different people who are sharing their cake, and an allotment lady who shares her produce all through different people. So it's quite a small geographic area, and I'm privileged to live here, so it does make it easier in terms of like doing the walks with them. Are several amazing stories. I'll just tell you about Matt, who intense mental health challenges, and it was brought along by a lady who is the council area coordinator, and she has been amazed and has phoned me up with joy because of the changes in him. And he has gone from being more or less a shut-in, and if not shut-in, then a bus ride to another local area where he just drinks and drinks and drinks. But now, a few weeks ago, he started a job as a cleaner at the hospital. And as he's OCD, it's absolutely perfect for him. So he's working 3 days a week, which is unbelievable, except that he's just got COVID. But even with that, he is texting to say the shopping he needs, and my husband is taking it up to him because they walk regularly. They're just good mates, the pair of them. So it's amazing what God's done with Matt.
I tell you, Ellen is a delight in that when we first had the first lockdown and I went, oh, that's it then, all this hard work, 50 centres, I had a bit of a spat me dummy. And Ellen was like, right, no, I'm just going to, I'll show up online. So Ellen, I think it was 7 hours that you were being present in one day in your Renew space. So you just made yourself available online across those 7 hours, didn't you, with a phone line and a Facebook page, and kind of watching Ellen and thinking, oh, okay, we can still do this. It's just being present goes in a different platform. Thank you, because you are a can-do lady, and you have been committed from the moment you got to lead a church to go, we're going to do this thing, because it's really key for making connections. Just before we move on in the conversation, Margaret, Ben, Mandy, just unmute yourselves. Mandy hates it if I bring her in. Just want to make sure people know how they can get involved with the Renew story. So just between you, help me remind people, what are the different ways in which people can connect with the Renew family coming out of this? Jump in.
They can buy your book and read your book.
Oh yeah, okay. Plug over, buy their book, and then actually
then join in your seminars.
Yeah, on the back of that, Ben, I think you've got the first one of these coming up. Tell us about the Saturday thing at the end of.
Yeah. So we kind of planned a webinar on the 30th of January, which is kind of mostly based or mostly aimed at like the southwest. But yeah, we're just getting everyone from the south on top of that who'd like to join in. It's kind of it's the book group route, so you kind of
we'll do it like a book group, won't we? But it'll be a training. And Ben's doing some stuff as well, isn't there? You're doing some stuff where you are in an outdoor context, aren't you, as well? Which hopefully, as things relax a bit, we're thinking outdoors will be safer, and then we can do this outdoors. Yes, and Margaret, Mandy, how else can we connect us?
We've got the Monday morning webinar every Monday morning, starting on the 18th, 11 a.m. for an hour, and it's an intro to Renew. And after that, if churches are interested, we can give you access to the next 3 short videos, and we'll link you in with an area coordinator, one of these lovely faces on the screen that's spotlighted, and they'll take it further.
Well, thank
And
you.
I think
If you want the newsletter, you can sign up with Mandy for a monthly newsletter, and if you sign up with me, I can send you out a weekly. We just like keeping in touch at the moment, and we're trying to keep rolling with the changes. So every Tuesday at 11 we have a chat on Zoom in an open Zoom room for anyone interested in Renew to say, how's it going, what do you need, how can we help you, how can we change the guidelines. So we're trying to keep it fresh. Thanks, wonderful folk who have joined me for that. I'm going to bring in a few extras here, so pray for us at Renew, keep in touch with us at Renew, keep journeying with us. So if those people who are on the screen now know how to unspotlight themselves with the 3 dots, I'm just going to bring in a few other people. So I'm going to bring Lynette, and I'm going to bring in Nate, and I'm going to bring in Corinne to have a little chat, and then I'm just going to take a few people out. Sorry. Here we go. That's it. Wonderful. So welcome to these buddies. I'll just get rid of you, Ellen. There you go. Welcome to these buddies from other charities. So same sort of question. Tell us who you are, what you do, and then what you're seeing as challenges and what your kind of hopes are. I know it's a big lot of questions. Corinne, do you want to kick us off? Where are you? Where are you at?
Thank you, Ruth. I mean, it's really good to be with you all, and it's just always gratifying to spend time with the Renew team, because there's so many good news stories in a time when they're a bit thin on the ground. And I work for Sanctuary UK, and we've sprung from a Canadian charity, and our role in life is to resource churches to help build well-being and support those who are going through mental health challenges. So obviously we align very closely to Renew and to the other charities here, Nate at Talk Through and Lynette at Kintsugi. Really, we want to help every church not just build their awareness, but go on a journey of building their well-being together. And that's the point of what we do. And so we do that by providing free resources and by providing training for people. So you can access that through our website. There'll be more details about later. But in terms of what's happening right now, I think there's something I've been thinking about lately, and that's it's really important to name that we are in one of the most difficult periods of this time. So, you know, a number of us have gone on different learning journeys. We've adjusted. We've gone through what we thought would be kind of the darkest times, and we found ourselves coming through Christmas thinking it's not too long till we get through, and we found out that's not the case. And so that's going to hit people really hard. And I think within that, you know, we're finding that at the moment, almost half the population are worried. And I think within that, if, you know, I think that in a way, I'm surprised that only half are, because of the fact that there is such uncertainty. And I think within this, there's a real challenge for us to hold on to a universal hope, because the hope that we've had, maybe the hope of a holiday or that hope of even seeing people, those things are diminishing, and it's very likely that we're going to be in a time when it's going to take you know, a fair amount of time for us to get back to that level of contact again. And so particularly within that, I think the challenges are going to be with people in our communities who are unemployed, certainly students. I mean, they've been much more in the in the press. There's been a lot more shared around them. Less so, I think, people who are unemployed in our communities who don't have other ways of connecting in, and of course, single parents. So I know that in many ways these are traditionally groups that tend to be more marginalised, but I think a level of extra proactivity is really going to help at this point, because people are in that place. And sad to say, through a lot of lockdown, there hasn't been much of a statistical shift around this, but within the last few months, this has been changing, and people are reporting much more around suicidal ideation, so thoughts of committing suicide, and it looks like the rate is going up a little. So that's of grave concern to all of us, at a time when we're all quite hard pressed. You know, even those of us, I think, who are pretty good at kind of self-managing, and, you know, I know for myself, I've been through lots of ups and downs in this period, but there are tools at my hand, you know, to try and manage my well-being. There are lots of other people who, through social isolation or lack of access to those tools, are going to find it really hard. So it's definitely a tough time, and so a time for, if we do feel we've got the scope, to really be vigilant around those people in our communities that might get overlooked, and perhaps within our extended congregations, friendship circles. So tough times, a reason to rally, I think, and there is reason to hope, definitely. I think for myself, if I look beyond this chapter, it's thinking about the fact that actually the whole game has been raised about this conversation around well-being. And I think the very fact that perhaps I think many of us have maybe been through that process, if we've not particularly experienced difficulties within our mood and our mental health, many of us, or those close to us, have been experiencing those perhaps either for the first time in a long time or the first time. And so I think there has been, in many ways, it's kind of raised the conversation in a way that's much more easily done. And whilst, you know, not all mental health difficulty is the same, you know, obviously not. There are many people who are going through profound suffering as a result of their mental health difficulty. I think what it does show us is that we, you know, as long as we are all in a position where we recognize we all have mental health, then we have a responsibility within our Christian communities to talk about it, to respond to it, to not just be aware, but have a practical response. And I think that, in a sense, if there's a legacy of this time, I think it will be that, and I hope it's that.
Thanks, Corinne. Corinne has, spent years working in the area of homelessness, mental health, and is new to the role of Sanctuary, but worked for Livability for a long time, as some of you will be familiar with. And so we're really grateful for our partnership with Sanctuary Ministries, and the Sanctuary course, which I know a lot of you have done, a free 8-week course, is really, really good to do with your small groups right now. Build it into your year with your small groups. It's just good stuff. Thanks, Corinne. We'll put some slides up at the end and give you a chance to do a pitch on what we wanted to do was say, why do we need to engage with this stuff? And then at the end, we'll just give you a great plethora of stuff you can choose from, and you can pick something. So Lynette, Kintsugi Hope, and we know Patrick and Diane Regan, who many of us know well, lifted the lid for us really well on how this is not just something outside the church. This is everybody's experience. Just tell us about Kintsugi and what you're seeing, would you? Thanks, Lynette.
Yeah, thank you. A bit like Corinne, I'm the new girl at Kintsugi. I've known Patrick and Diane for a long time, so it's just a joy now to be part of their team and just be in this conversation, because I'm hearing exactly the same sorts of things as we're wrestling with and also hopeful about and committed to at Kintsugi. If you've never heard of us, Patrick and Diane founded it out of an absolute heart to just see people be able to be safely supported in a space. So much overlap with Renew and your centres and your cafes, so it's so exciting to be part of this. Yeah, I think we hear a lot of mechanical language about us as people, that we're broken, and all of those things. And this whole basis of Kintsugi is about the Japanese art, where if something is shattered or broken, fixing it with glue, with gold glue, makes it even more unique and beautiful. And so our whole heart really is to advocate for positive mental health and emotional well-being in the same way that all you guys are doing.
You've got some amazing resources, haven't you, Lynette? Which
yeah.
Patrick's just really good at bringing out shiny resource. I mean, he's really good at it. I've looked at the stuff myself. He's written some really great books, which for blokes as well, like lift the lid on. You can talk about this. We're really grateful for how Patrick has made it okay in the church.
Yeah,
to talk
and his
about
whole phrase was, "It's okay not to be okay," wasn't it? Which is now used in an awful lot of places. So one of the first things that they devised was this Wellbeing group course, which is 12 weeks. We're seeing it now being run a bit like you guys. Things have just trebled and quadrupled during COVID, during this past year, which has, for all of us, meant we've scrambled around, partly why I've been employed, because they've grown so much and they need some further help. We've now got a couple of 100 church partners, and the year started, I think, with 40. Over 600 leaders trained to run groups. And our whole thing is that we don't want the church to be seen as somebody that's out to fix or rescue, but to come alongside and love and accept and support and understand. So the wellbeing groups will just provide a platform for me too, basically, safe place to talk. It's got some structure. It's got 12 weeks of structured themes, whole plethora of learning styles that you can adapt. So anyway, we can tell you about the material.
Absolutely. And I'll stick the slides up for that, and you can always get in touch with Lynette. I mean, this is a taster of the fact that God knew this was coming. We'd become friends over the last couple of years. As a new kid on the block, as a charity, I said, where are the people who've been doing this for years? I want to learn from you. So we started having conversations, didn't we? Now I've met some of you, and it's been delightful because we don't want to reinvent a wheel. As a charity, we're really keen that we learn from each other. And as charities, we are committed to make sure where there is overlap, we just keep signposting to each other.
Absolutely.
Nathan, just bringing you in here. So Nate is a wonderful friend and has a variety of hats, but tell us about Talk Through first, Nate.
Yeah, hi everyone. So really Talk Through works in what I call the middle space. So recognising that church youth workers play a pivotal role in wellbeing care. In fact, the Children's Commission and Young Minds have talked about the importance of upskilling the church. It's really important that we know that the secular world recognises the role of the church, but youth work dwell with young people across the whole spectrum of their lives, really, whether they're happy, sad, and everything in between, just like teachers do and parents. And so my main heart is to equip, and Talk Through equips those who work with young people to be effective support. So that's both in terms of training, but also in writing and developing resources they can use. The ultimate heart is to create more access to provision. And but also particularly for Christian young people who might have that extra dilemma of how mental health and poor well-being impacts their discipleship, and issues like guilt and shame that also impact their well-being. Where do they go? And so I'm really interested in the increasing access to crisis provision that is not just secular driven, nothing wrong with a lot of that, but actually is also accessible to young people of faith, where there might be faith-based well-being issues. Slightly different nuance, and how we equip youth workers to manage and hold all that. It's quite, that's what I do. Sort of.
I love that whenever Nate and I got together, I learned to articulate what I'd love to see happen in this nation. Nathan can tell you his dream too, is that no child goes to sleep without someone had to talk to. You know, that there's somebody for every child. I just think, you know, your little dream for like a kind of helpline, national helpline for youth workers to be able to, I want to get behind that dream, Nathan, because I want to sort of salute those who've taken years to get their expertise to a point where they've got something in their hand to offer now to a church that's not sure what to do. So Nathan can offer your church training for your youth workers, get alongside you. We're working with Nate to put together what Renew Youth Places can look like. I know that Kintsugi Hope have got some resources that they've also tapped Nate's brain for. You know, there's good overlap going on here, and we will constantly commit as a group of charities to make sure we provide what you need to be able to do what it is that only the church can do. Nathan, we're going to come back to that stuff on youth in just a moment, because it's massive, isn't it? This whole lack of education in school, friendships, exams being messed around. What do you think has shifted during this year for young people that's made it worse?
And so we've heard reports that some young people actually are happier because they're at home more. For some young people, that's a really great benefit. We won't know what the second or third lockdown's done. Just a couple of stats. I know stats are stats, but broadly speaking, 4,000 young people were interviewed by Bernardo's, and there was a 40% increase in things, anxiety and loneliness and sadness and fear. Worse problems have been for young people that are already accessing mental health provision, and 90% of them saw a deterioration in their well-being because they were already in the system and it came out very rapidly. It's all very difficult to get hold of. So I guess one of the ways to look at it is I like the idea of scaffolding. And I think a lot of the scaffolding that is normally around young people, like access to youth provisions, about 2 million young people, I think, or maybe 1 million, who are in the youth service, that shut down. Schools, a lot of young people like school, a lot of them don't. Even those that don't probably don't always appreciate the scaffolding that school provides, the scaffolding that youth workers provide, that healthy parents provide. Because this isn't just something like exam stress that just affects young people. It's affected every generation, hasn't it? And I imagine sometimes, I know as adults, we're not always as good at articulating ourselves and coping, but children are very vulnerable. And I really don't like the phrase that young people and children are strong. I don't like it because I understand sometimes are young, and some of these emotions and feelings will be the first time they're experiencing this ever. And one piece of research that came out from Young Minds was that 50% of young people don't feel confident in talking about their well-being, and 30% feel like they have no one to talk to. And I think we forget that talking about what really matters to you is a huge risk. And if you've never done it before, you don't know what to do. And so there's a lot of work to be done really about destigmatizing well-being, but helping young people to understand who to talk to and what happens when they talk. Critical, we forget that every young person growing up, that's the first time they're 13. It's the first time it's like, you know, we forget that as adults, we've got a whole life experience behind us, haven't we? But young people and children don't. So the narratives of well-being, we have to keep re-educating, because it's the first time they're becoming aware of what, do you know what I mean? Until you're in a crisis, you don't really worry about it, do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's,
Nathan,
and we need to equip them.
Honestly, this is so good. Whenever I hear any of you guys talk, I'm like, yes, this is the same heart, right? So I know that Corinne, for the Sanctuary course, the first session is about destigmatizing well-being. And actually, if we as a church aren't confident with our language about what well-being is, then we will give off all the wrong kind of messages to our kids, and we won't mean to. But if we say, well, just trust Jesus, it'll all be okay, we're actually shutting down the ability for our kids to express lament and loss and grief, because we're not comfortable with it. So, you know, we would say with Renew at the moment, we're more at the adult end, really, of going, let's get the whole church talking well-being in a way that means that when Nathan comes along and Sarah and starts to bring, and Lynette, and bringing resources for your youth workers, they're not doing it into a vacuum of a church that don't really understand the language. So yeah, and Corinne, you've got some stuff for leaders as well. We're seeing some very weary leaders who are now trying to perform on several platforms. What have you got for them that might be helpful? You're still on mute. I have to say that weird. You're on mute, Corinne. You're on mute. He's still on it. There you is. There you are.
Classic. Yeah, we produce something called Deeply Rooted. So that's a free download on the Sanctuary website. And it's, I think it's good for anybody who is in frontline ministry or helping professions. Obviously, if you're involved in people, then your risk of burnout is really high at the moment. And yeah, it's really important that we look after each other and look after our leaders. And so that's a free resource that we recommend people, if they can, they pair up to do that. And if you're perhaps concerned about how your leadership team are working at the moment, and if people have been expressing some concerns around their exhaustion, this might be a really good way to start that conversation. So that's free on the Sanctuary website. I think it is a concern really what's happening for leaders at the moment, and I think it's really important that we all within our churches have got a strategy around that, because again, you know, lots of change and lots of need. It's a combination for us being overstretched.
Thanks, Corinne. I've just been getting out one of my, just really practically, Nate and I worked on this resource, which you also, Nate does writing for Ugly Duckling Company, who produced the marvellous Table Talk stuff that many of you would have used. There's a Table Talk for Wellbeing now that we've been part of putting together, and it's got picture cards in as well. So basically you can pick these up and they help you get talking. There's cards, but there's also some stuff you can use on the screen as well. Really well worth getting hold of. And then around the 5 ways to well-being. So this is one of the give questions. How do you give to yourself? That would start you can't win this game, can you, Nate? Really? I mean, you know, there's not points mean prizes, which for people like me means there's a problem with it. But I do quite like, you know, you can pick a card. Why do you want to talk about that card? What does it make you feel like? I think these might be really a useful resource. So we'll come to resources in about 10 minutes, but what I wanted you to do was to get into breakout groups now, because we've done quite a bit of talking, and in your breakout rooms you might end up with some of these marvelous experts, but mostly it's just us with our own well-being needs going, what are you seeing, what do you what do you understand by well-being? What do you need in your hand? What could we place in your hand to help you? And kind of what do you feel like God is saying about this whole kind of shalom well-being thing? So just take a little bit of time. I know what it's like when you go in breakout rooms. You spend so long working out that your mother's dog used to go to their church and stuff, that takes a while. If you could get down to just like, what are you seeing in mental and emotional health challenges around you? What would you need to meet those, and what are the fears around it? Be honest. My fear is getting overwhelmed, because I've been there before. So be honest in these. Now I'm going to try this, right? I'm just sending you to, how many people have we got manned? I don't know, I can't hear you because you're on mute. There you go.
37 it says on here.
37, 5, 7, 35. Right, I'll put 7 breakout rooms. There's about 5 or 6 of us in each room, and I'll bring you back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll get each of these guys to make an offer of how they can help you. And we've got some slides to show you, so you'll need a notebook and pen for them. Here we go. You're off. Maybe. It's great, isn't it? Ooh. Maggie. Hi, Maggie. Can you still hear me on this? No. Welcome back. Welcome back. Maggie, I don't know what happened. I'm really sorry. I don't seem to, I just kept Maggie, basically. Unable to see you, hear you, and or move you, so I'm really sorry about that. If you've got any questions that you think might be good that other people might have as well, chuck them in the chat box. I'll bring Corinne and Lynette and Nate back on screen and we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So if you think of anything, pop it in there. Everyone will arrive back in a moment. You're a very obedient group. Were you one group?
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
Well done. If there was a prize, if we were there in person, I'd be giving out books now for free, which is why my trustees will be very pleased I'm not.
That was quick.
My copy arrived today, Ruth.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad. Wonderful. Welcome back, people. If you'd like to pop yourself back onto mute, that will help the echo. I'm just going to bring in. Oh, okay. It says I am spotlighted and I'm not spotlighted. So how do we do that? Okay. Oh, that's weird. Wait a moment. Well, if you've got any questions coming out of that session, if you just pop them in the chat box, that would be great. We'll have a quick Q&A. Anybody who feels brave enough to say what question or might be helpful to everybody that's come out of their group, you can just wave at me. I think I've got you all on one screen, actually. Yeah, that's all right. We're all together. So we can see each other, for those of us who've got laptops rather than phones. If you want to wave at me, if you've got a question.
There's two screens and there was somebody waving on the second one.
Oh, I've only got one screen, Fiona. Margaret, how's that happened? Oh, Naomi, welcome. Naomi, who didn't meet before, is our coordinator for South Wales.
Hi, Naomi.
Funded by the South Wales Baptist Association. How good's that? For a 3-year contract of getting renew centres started in South Wales. We're very excited about that. Right, team, have you seen any questions in the chat box?
Derek Sanderson had their hand up.
Derek Sanderson, where are you?
I'd just like to just carry on briefly about what we started to talk about. A lot came out, and that is about the unity of the churches where we live being behind all of these, and we're in a fortunate position that we've got a good unity between our church, the Baptist, the Methodist Church, and the Anglican Church. And I feel the reason being is that we have a prayer group made up of people from each of these groups, and we pray regularly, chat about and to pray. And I think if areas could do that, it's really beneficial.
Yeah. Thanks, Derek. I think you went, sorry. Sylvia, I think that wasn't Derek with a very high voice. Sylvia, I think that is, you have for years been praying into that place, and you can tell because this place of commanded blessing, this unity. One of the things we found is people are prepared to unite around prayer and around mental health because we don't really know what to do. So we're finding more unity than we've ever seen before. Yeah, anybody else who's spotting a question in the chat box? Fiona.
Yeah, one of the questions that's come up in the chat box is actually in line with what we were talking about in the group. It's from Catherine, and it says, in a middle-class, comfortable rural village, there has always seemed to be a reluctance for folk to open up. Do these sorts of groups work in this setting? We were talking about the South with Ben and how there's maybe, and Lynette, and maybe there's a bit of a denial of the problem. I don't know, it's going to be more of a harder area to to work in. So is it appropriate for the south of England is the question, I guess.
So interesting one. Corinne, you're in the south, bring you in on that. You want to just unmute and tell us what you think about that? You're still muted. There you go, got you. South versus north. I mean, we don't want to have to do that, but it is interesting. Does depend on the place you are as to whether people are willing to talk about mental health at all.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think the thing I'd probably say is around, culture generates culture, doesn't it? So you probably don't want to have a standing start without knowing that there are at least 2 or 3 people who are willing to have that conversation, because I think that gives permission. and that then can generate what you're looking for. So I think there's something about that, isn't there? And I was really struck by the example that we heard earlier that Steve gave of what's happening in the living rooms, of, you know, even someone who experienced quite a high level of exclusion coming in, and the gentle rhythms of what things that are happening within a space like a Renew space. There's something very invitational about that. And I think the two things that are really important in it are that people are open themselves who are running it, and also there's some level of confidence in those rhythms of just saying that these are tried and tested. And, you know, you can't force a conversation, but you can invite, can't you? Just in the same ways that, you know, you can't make anybody pray, but you can invite. So I think there's something around that. And particularly if there are maybe one or two people that feel at least enough of the need. And also, I think it's our own journey as well, as our own willingness to talk about what's going on with us. That vulnerability really gives permission, I think.
Yeah,
and
thanks. You're right, Corinne. You're absolutely right. It's weird, isn't it, that culture produces, I like that, culture creates culture, vulnerability produces vulnerability. One of the things we found, which I'll answer one of the other questions, is a question about whether you can have a Kintsugi group alongside a wellbeing group, or is it the same thing? It's interesting that Kintsugi is more a sort of peer mentored conversation about wellbeing, and whereas some people might not feel able to or have the language for, and I'm not talking about people who haven't got the language capability, I mean people who haven't got the emotional capability to talk about it, we've found that in our Renew spaces where you're actually getting together around a strength-based approach, going bring a hobby, share a hobby, what are you good at, then the other conversations will happen in the background and almost, you know, incidental and over time. So I would say, and we've talked about this with Kintsugi before, you know, you can run a specific Kintsugi group and have an ongoing Renew space. And so you could have specific, you know, do a sanctuary course in your small groups, but the Renew space is like the lowest common denominator of showing up. But at the same time, you're not saying you've got to come here and talk about your mental health. You don't have to. You can just rock up and bring your artwork and do it together rather than on your own, and say nothing, but not be on your own. So I think there's something about, I'm longing for real spaces again. But what we found is, regardless of where you are, a Renew space works, because it's not needing you to come and talk about anything, particularly if you're not ready to. It's saying, if you're a human being with a pulse, you probably need a hobby of some sort. Do you want to come and do it? And then that will depend on the area you're in as to what comes out, you know, what sort of stuff you end up doing together. So any other questions, team, that you can spot that might be helpful before we give you some offers of what you can actually do? Yeah, Teresa from the Isle of Man. Where are you, Teresa? Wave at us. Up until just recently, Teresa was the only member of the Renew family practically running her space properly, because they had no COVID. And how are the numbers over there now, Teresa?
Sorry, I have to find myself and unmute.
No, you are. No, you're right. No, you're not on mute. You're okay. You're unmuted.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
The numbers now are 20 plus, which doesn't seem very many, but we have been COVID free for 5 months, and the government have been very.
It's a shame, isn't it? Yeah. So you've gone back into lockdown too, haven't you?
Yeah. Into full lockdown.
Yeah, but what you were finding during that time when you were open was the need was just as immense, even without COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, you've still had all your regulars coming.
Yeah, and we've noticed a lot of anxiety among some of our regulars going back into lockdown.
It's this idea that once we get rid of COVID, we'll all be, you know, fine again. Actually, no, it's changed the nature of what we now know is possible, and it's rocked people's certainties. And therefore, any habits that bring us to a bigger story, the hands around the cup, are going to help people. And that's where the church has a unique place at the wellbeing table, because we're not saying you're okay. We're saying we're not okay. None of us are. That's the gospel, right? So it's not, come on, be more resilient. You can do it. is. I'm pretty empty and I can't do it, but I do know the hands that hold me have got me, and I'm going to have to work out how to concentrate on the hands around the cup today. So I really would love for each of our sort of, I call you visitors. I hope you're not visitors, Corinne, Nate and Lynette. It's been lovely to have you with us. But when we do, Fresh Streams is more than just a conference once a year. We are a network of God's people on a journey together towards mission. So if you would journey with us, if we can use your resources and stick them on our website, you can link then through to Kintsugi, to Sanctuary, to Talk Through. There are other charities. I'm saying that because I want to say, you know, Mind and Soul Foundation and Think Twice. And in fact, in the back of my book, I do a little section on all the other charities and how you can get hold of them. So I so want people to do something. I don't mind what it is. So we've taken some book space up for that. But if I could just ask each of you in a sentence whilst I'm showing the screen sharing, we'll go Corinne first, and then Lynette, and then Nate. If I just show your slides, if you want to just unmute yourself and talk over them. Hold on a minute. I just need to, that's not what I wanted to show you, in fact. Let me just stop sharing that because that's the wrong one. Is it that I've been here so long it's actually disappeared? Yeah, no, that's true. Sorry, folks, I'm just going to have to lose you for a moment and find this. Corinne, why don't you just kick off whilst I find your slide and tell us what Sanctuary can offer.
Great. So two main things at the moment to draw to your attention. One is that everything that's on our site is free. So do take a look at it and have an explore. There's a UK site which I'm responsible for, and that will link you to all of our resources. And there are two specific things I'd like to name at the moment that would be helpful. On the second slide that is on there is this course that we have called Faith, Grief and COVID-19. Now, we've had a really good response to this. It's got 4 different people who come from background theology, psychology and counselling who are talking about the impact of loss and bereavement during a time like this. So it's not just loss through people that have lost loved ones, but also in terms of the way that life has changed. And it's proved a really helpful way for communities to explore this together. It gives people real permission, and I've seen people really connect through this. And only 4 sessions, so it's not a big commitment, but I'd really recommend you look into that. Brilliant. And if you're thinking more generally about building up your expertise and awareness as church, then you might want to consider the Sanctuary course itself. So that's a deeper dive. It's 8 weeks. It's a mixture of film and reflection, and it's just a really great way of saying we as a church are really committed to developing our awareness and our response to mental health. So a couple of things you can access there. It's all free, and if you want
to look at that lovely picture. Wow. Corinne, we're so pleased to partner with you in this. Look at that. So Lynette, tell us about what Kintsugi can offer. There's the contact details if you want to get those down. We can send you these as well, guys, if you want them. So these slides.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. I think there's the slide now. The main thing really for guys like you who are all engaged in this space are our groups. The steps to becoming a well-being group leader are that your church needs first to become a church partner, because we're very keen with our DBS and our safeguarding, and just having somebody who's an oversight to wherever the groups are running. But they can be run in wellbeing cafes, they can be run in homeless centres, they can be run in cafes, they can be run anywhere. They're not just specifically for church groups, but we do still advocate that it is got the backing of a church and the safeguarding policies of the church. So yeah, you can find out all about it online. The other big thrust for us this year will be to tweak these groups so that they are people group specific. We're looking at working, creating the groups suitable for refugees, for single parents, for NHS workers, for students. We've got a pilot going to be running in prisons. So they are adaptable to all sorts of environments. And it's not like you have to do a whole separate training, but there will be extra bear in mind if you are running a group within that kind of environment. And then another big thrust this year will be We're looking at maybe trying to do some research or some training in what is a mentally healthy church? What does a mentally healthy church look like? And how do we, as all of us together in this space, begin to see what that could look like, and then get people on board to get going on creating mentally healthy churches?
Thanks, Lynette. There's some echoes there with sanctuary and sanctuary church being a sanctuary for all, whatever stage of their mental health journey. And we too say that you must have a church behind you, the backing of your leadership team, so that this is properly founded and can continue. Nate, give us a quick run through of your slides too, please.
Yeah, just and you can just put that one up in the long, but real quick, most of our work is in the delivery of training workshops. So as I said, train beyond what we call beyond mental health first aid. So it's quite comprehensive. It follows the foundations of good, what we can do as youth work pastors, and then how to build safe spaces that refer young people on, how to do that, how to know when. So that's a big part of the training. And then the other part really on the next slide, Ruth, so it's all words really, is that most of our work is developing around building capacity and resources. And if you go onto the website, part of it's 2 new resources. One is the people who Able Talk for Wellbeing. We're writing a brand new program called 1010, which is a 10-part suite of resources using positive psychology and the impact of positive psychology on character education and well-being for use, mainly for youth workers and chaplains to take into schools. And what I didn't mention earlier on is we've got trials taking place in 2 secondary schools at the moment who have continued the trial with parents of children of key workers, because they're so keen to see the work done. And so that's the other part of the work I do, is we produce. So my other plea would be, think about the training, but go onto the website and just look at the different resources that we are working in collaboration with. And if you're interested in just knowing about them or connecting, it would be great to connect with you as we continue to expand provision specifically in equipping the church to support young people, because there's not a huge amount of it. So we're trying to work in collaboration with as many people. So that's a bit. But the last slide I think's got my email address on, but
Yeah, there you
the
go.
very last one.
There we are. I can let you have
get hold of me.
these slides, guys. And just forgot to tell you about ours, just very quickly. If you want to connect with Renew Wellbeing, there's the website address. Go on a webinar, join a training course, meet with a coordinator, or you can do the Big Church Read or do it through that way, to do your training that way instead. Thank you so much. What a delightful afternoon. A way to spend some time, and what richness there is that God has already prepared. So if we just take a moment of quiet, and just where you are in the muteness of your room, would you pray for those charities working alongside people who are trying to set something up, for those of us who've shared on screen, but also for your own well-being, that something would spring out of your own understanding of your own brokenness, your own vulnerability, your own need for well-being habits, and that we would be an honest church at the very center of a wave of well-being. Lord, would you please come on your church represented here and show us what you mean by the beautiful gospel of well-being, that it's genuinely okay not to be okay. You've got us, and we're not waiting for the pandemic to be over to trust you, to dig deeper into this well-being gospel, to be honest, vulnerable, real, to see spaces open up where it's okay not to be okay, to see people come to faith because of what's going on. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Speak a blessing over Nathan, over Lynette, over Corinne, over the team from Renew and the hosts from Renew who shared. Lord, Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on us. We need you. As we wait on the Lord, would you renew our strength? Would we mount up with wings like eagles, run and not be weary, walk and not be faint? God of well-being, may the God of all peace make you whole and holy May he keep you safe, body, mind, and spirit, ready for his presence. He has called us. He is faithful. He will do it. Amen.